Education meeting. Can you all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Tonight we did not have an executive session, so can I have a motion to call the meeting to order, please, or to open the meeting, excuse me. Motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Can I get a motion to approve the agenda as stated?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Does anybody have anything to pull from the consent agenda tonight?
I would like to pull fiscal 3.3.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have anything that they would like to pull from the agenda this evening? All right. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda as stated?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, fiscal 3.3.
I was just wondering if we could have some details on.
Excuse me, Jen, can you just use your microphone?
Can we just have some details? Is this on? Is it on? Well,
Okay, now it's on.
sorry. Can you just go over some details of the auctions that take place?
Sure. Throughout the year, we deem various supplies, equipment, or materials that are owned or purchased by the district to either be obsolete or no longer functioning. We have a process that we have to follow not only through our board policies, but through New York State Education Department to deem them of no value. And then the board approves those items, and then we put them out to bid. Oftentimes those bids are blind, so people will identify themselves with a username or through the third-party auction company, so there cannot be, so it's a cleaner process. What you're approving tonight, I believe, are those, the results of the auction. And this usually happens 2 or 3 times a year. So oftentimes it's old equipment, certainly technology with all the technology upgrades, hardware that we've been purchasing over the last number of years, we want them to really be end of life.
And the auctions are public then?
Yeah, we post them in our legal notices. That's part of the process as well, to make sure everyone has access.
Okay, thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions about fiscal 3.3? All right, can I get a motion to approve fiscal item 3.3?
Motion to approve.
Can I get a second? All in favor?
Aye.
There were no donations tonight, right, Carmen? Okay. I mean, not good, but I was afraid I missed some. All right, so that brings us to our superintendent's report.
2 updates. One is our continuing work toward implementing the Princeton plan. The board has asked for a monthly overview of our activities and how we're progressing with being sure we're ready to go by September of 2022. So I put together a couple slides. When we discussed this previously on December 15th before the new year, we were eagerly awaiting some feedback from a PTA survey that was put together and distributed in November and December. Over the last couple of days, we received some of that raw data from the group of elementary PTA leaders that put that together. I wanted to share this with everyone because this will be the springboard to a next set of activities to do FAQs with parents or have some meetings with them or to direct our team to be able to get information back to them. So in November and December, elementary PTAs put out a survey really with 2 purposes. One was to get input from families around how PTA at the elementary level would be organized next year, as well as to receive questions with regards to implementing the Princeton plan. While the PTAs have not decided how they will organize, and I know they have some informational meetings coming up, what I'm going to report are some of the themes from the survey. So we received, or they received, I should say, 106 responses. I consider that to be low. We have around 900 elementary students. Even if we said that each student has 1.5 parents, we're looking at a total survey population of a little over 1,300. But of the 106 survey responses, you'll see the 3 themes and identified by responses. So not all 106 respondents commented in these areas, but the top area of interest is transportation. 91 of the 106 had questions in that area. 71 of the 106 had questions or would like additional information on curriculum and specials. 41 of the 106 had questions around special ed, and then there were just other items of interest. So in terms of transportation, the themes that came out are really around parental interest around pickup and drop-off times, how long their children will be in the bus to and from school, what the capacity of the bus will look like. Are we putting more students on the bus than we typically have? And if the answer is yes, will that create some safety concerns? Came out of the survey. Where their bus stops will be, and then also whether or not we would have an opportunity to practice bus runs either this spring or into the summer. So in terms of pickup and drop-off time, length of bus ride, really the first 3, well, I should say the first 4, is what Liz and her team are working on. What they need to do is create a system, what we call in the sandbox. While we have a very elaborate transportation routing software, what they need to do is lock that in and then create a new set of logistic principles. Basically roll everyone over who's in K through 4 right now and run a mock transportation system prospective to next year, knowing where students will go. Frank G will house K and 1, 2 and 3 at BV, and then ultimately 4 and 5 at Furnace Woods. So she is working on that. As we previously reported, our goal is to make sure students are on the bus no more than 40 minutes. Some buses will not certainly be at capacity as sometimes they haven't been. We've had buses, particularly in the Furnace Woods neighborhood, with maybe as many as 30 or 40 students, but as few as a dozen. So all of these first 4 bullets are really contingent on rolling over those students and coming up with mock bus stops. Now there's a risk. There's a risk to putting this out there, is that we're going to have a lot of debate between when a draft routing schedule is posted and when we actually open school. There's going to be a lot of conversations around bus stops and length of bus and those sort of things. So the software we use have 2 priorities: to be most efficient in terms of use of the bus. And most efficient means fewer stops, means less gas, which means the bus moves from point A to point B quicker in terms of duration on the bus. And the second is to make sure that the routing software moves in a way in terms of their actual route to limit the amount of time students are on the bus. Throughout, Liz Gillio, our transportation director, she'll be here in a couple weeks to talk about her budget plan. She's been tightening the belt in terms of our expenses for transportation because we've been creating fewer stops. The fewer bus stops you have, the quicker the bus can get from point A to point B, meaning the furthest bus stop that they have to pick up to the school they drop off, or vice versa. So this information will start to be known as we put our K through 4 kids in the sandbox, as we say. What we don't know is kindergarten. We have maybe we're roughly around, I don't know, Margaret, a half to a third of kindergartners registered that we're expecting, and that can, play havoc on the transportation system as well. The difference between 160 kindergartners and only 100 has a huge impact on where buses go and where they pick up. In terms of practice bus runs, certainly we'll look at that, whether or not we can have every child on the bus or go through their routine. Might be a little difficult as we wrap up the school year, but perhaps over the summer, that's just a conversation we'll have to have with Liz and see if that's possible. The reality is the second to last bullet, bus stop locations. Bus stops will likely change. And they'll change based on that routing software because they're not necessarily going to the same school anymore. So Liz and her team downstairs don't randomly select where bus stops will be, but we try to use the computer software to do that. Also, the computer software, one of the important pieces of the computer software is it estimates the actual mileage driven. We use that information at the end of the year to receive significant reimbursement from the state education department, which you'll see in Liz's transportation budget is our transportation aid. So we want to make sure that we're as efficient in that area as well. So Liz and our transportation routing consultant are going to start working on these, and when she's ready to post some draft runs, I know that she'll do that. As we did last spring, we picked a couple draft runs. We identified students that live in the northeast corner of our district, how long those children would be on the bus going to BV, which would be their furthest school. We also identified students that live in the southwest part of our district going to Furnace Woods, which would be that furthest school. We did not have a draft bus run that was more than 40 minutes. The ones that we did were really unique situations. A bus that would go up Red Oak Lane to only pick up a few kids and then turn around in the cul-de-sac and come back, or buses that would go through some different neighborhoods that you would be in the bus 5 minutes between stops. Her goal is to make sure that we have either vans or small buses that can get out to those more unique places quicker to make sure that ride time is minimized. So as we said last year, our goal is less than 40 minutes, and that's going to continue to be a priority for us in terms of transportation. The next focus area question or interest in terms of additional information were around curriculum and specials. The 4 themes here were specials schedules. It looks like I left a word out, but how often will students have specials? Will they be on the same rotation? The answer is yes. That's how we built our staffing pattern. Potential adds and changes. We had talked, this group had talked last year through our investigation of what other districts are doing that are organized by grade level. We had talked about perhaps in the future moving toward a standalone science program, especially at the fourth and fifth grade school. Starting our foreign languages earlier for elementary students, particularly in fourth and fifth grade, being across the field from the middle school. Additional opportunities, music, so on and so forth. So I know that we are working with our library media specialist to continue to move that position that used to be the old card catalog Dewey Decimal System to more of a STEM technology-related position. Those of you who have been on the board and have had children in elementary schools for the last number of years heard them present and have seen some of the benefits in terms of coding and beginning STEM activities that relate certainly to programs that children have an opportunity to partake in the middle school and certainly at the high school. Ability grouping. This is one of the opportunities that we talked a great deal about last year. When you now have anywhere between 7, 8, or 9 classrooms per grade level in any given building, we've been able to increase the opportunity for those teachers to collaborate, for students to move within a hallway or just down a couple doors to receive either enrichment or some remediation in very short targeted opportunities. Some schools, and almost every school has had it at one point, only 2 sections per grade level. It makes very, very difficult for students to move between those schools, move between those classrooms based on their ability. So I know Margaret is continuing to work with the teachers as they meet during early release days to talk about what the staffing will look like, who's going to be assigned to which building and grade level. And I know it's an interest on their part as well that every child receive their baseline instructional opportunity from their classroom teacher, but within one wing of a school, we'll be able to have students physically move around to be able to experience enrichment activities or in some cases remediation activities. That's not to say that students will be placed in classrooms by ability. That is absolutely not the case. It's an opportunity for us to use our RTI model, use the diagnostic data that our elementary teachers use to provide real-time support in a very targeted period of time when you have, as I said, anywhere between, I think our lowest is maybe 7 teachers per grade level. You've increased an opportunity for collaboration and for those students to receive additional remediation or extension activities. The last theme coming out of curriculum specials were transitioning in readiness. This had to do with not only parental readiness, there were some both students and teachers. Transition and readiness for students and teachers. So this was about coordinating schedules among the schools, make sure concerts were happening on different nights or back to school night or PTA meetings, to make sure that there was vertical alignment between the first graders and the second graders between schools, and certainly third grade teachers and fourth grade teachers. So we'll be able to provide some FAQs and some opportunities to engage with our parents around those topics. The last main theme was special education. I know Lisa and her team have been working in this arena and will continue to, but the 3 focus areas that came out of the survey is continuity of special education services. For example, will there be an ABC program in all 3 schools? What about ICT, special class, so on and so forth, as well as transitions. We talked last year about perhaps related service providers or social workers or counselors moving with groups of kids spanning between schools. So while we have 3 schools that have 2 grade levels, perhaps some of that staffing are organized rather than by school, they're organized to help students through the transition. For example, some of the itinerant staff may be scheduled between K and 2 and 3 and 5. So students that are leaving Frank G at the end of first grade will have some of the familiar faces when they go to BB in second, and as BB students leave third grade, again, for those that are receiving some special education or additional support, students leaving BB in third grade may see some familiar faces as they go to Furnace Woods for fourth and fifth. And then lastly, some questions or concerns about class size to make sure that if we have the need, that we are hiring additional staff, that we have service providers in all 3 schools, to make sure that students' IEPs are being met and that their needs are being met. And then lastly, were other topics, and there are pages and pages that we're still combing through with the PTA. There were 54 different responses on basically individual interests, so we'll try to go through those, and as I said, create an FAQ or work some of those topics in. So for example, there were some outliers around COVID, a question around the campus vision for Furnace Woods in the middle school, student-teacher ratios that we'll talk about as we get through deeper into our budget process in terms of how many teachers per grade level and what the average class size will be. So some of those topics that didn't necessarily fit those previous themes, we'll make sure that we get information out to folks. So in terms of what's next, we've been updating everyone monthly. We've been posting these updates and presentations and any new information to our website, so make sure you frequent the website. As I said earlier, we'll take this document and this feedback and create some FAQs with the elementary PTAs that helped us coordinate and organize this information. As we did last year, I know they were virtual, but they were pretty well attended. Have some meetings with parents, really by theme and by topic. So for example, Lisa and I already talked. She knows her targeted population to talk about special education. Maybe families who have children in ABC will have a different conversation with Lisa and her team, and students who have ICT services will have a separate one. So we'll be able to have some targeted conversations with those folks if they're interested. I mentioned earlier that we're using our early release time for the staff of the prospective schools to come together and talk about, to meet each other, start to build community, start to identify what grade level they're going to be teaching and build some camaraderie. But they're also talking about transition activities, particularly the last 3. Finding opportunities for students to go to their new school, meet their new principal, tour the school, meet other children in the same grade level, have some icebreaker opportunities. So part of part of the time and resource we're giving with Early Release Day are for those teachers and our social workers and psychologists to come up with those plans. We mentioned school tours. Yes, the recent or the pandemic and certainly the last wave has sort of closed this up a little bit, but the goal is to have more foot traffic in the school, so parents especially can see the layout of the school, know where important key offices are, key personnel are in the school, and get a feel for their new environment. And then ultimately our continued collaboration with the PTAs. When we met with them in October to get on their agenda and talk about this, they really felt it was important to go through an open-ended survey. One of the reasons perhaps that we only received 106 responses was it was open-ended, that those that responded to the survey had to volunteer their information, as opposed to sometimes surveys direct you to answer based on certain topics. So it was a little more laborious of a process if you were a respondent, because you had to type in your information. You couldn't just click a pre-slug theme or answer to generate some quantifiable data. And also that's why it took a little while to call through the results. So there were dozens and dozens of pages and feedback, and certainly we thank the PTAs for stepping up and helping us with this endeavor. So next month when we come back, we'll have an update on the early release day that is happening on Monday the 31st. I know Margaret, Lisa, and I and the 3 elementary principals are meeting tomorrow to talk about additional opportunities to have different faces and different members of our team come and give brief updates at the board meeting. And while that's important, I also want to underscore that this conversation will happen in other places as well. PTA meetings, Google Meets, FAQs, information that we're pushing out. So we don't want to just reserve information sharing to our meetings every other week, but make sure there's multiple opportunities for folks to engage and be informed as we move forward.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions before we move on to the next topic?
Is there a way we could build a roadmap from where we are to where we'll be in September, and then plus some date where we can go back to ensure that we've met the needs of transitioning to Princeton plan, like similar to what we saw with strategic plan, how we had a roadmap of the different events that would happen with a timeline, and then so parents could see, they expect, for school tours to happen in April, a little bit more detail than what you share during the general information that you're sharing here. I just think it would be nice for parents to know what to expect so they could talk to their kids. And maybe they could provide input, even if it's emails, like what they're looking for. And then maybe one place to go for all Princeton plan information. So it would be a standalone site or something.
Yeah, we have the standalone site where we've archived all of our activities and the cost analysis and the meetings from last year and updates this year. So that certainly, that infrastructure has been built. We can put together a roadmap with some target dates in terms of deliverables. I think one issue we're going to run into is what opportunity or availability we'll have to do some of those things, especially getting different kids in different buildings or doing tours in the facilities. I know those are 2 really important topics that Lisa and her related service team, the social workers and psychologists, are working on, and school council are going to work on with students in terms of getting acclimated, feeling comfortable, who to ask. Some of those activities are going to be contingent on where we are in the pandemic and the opportunity for people to physically be in other places. But we can certainly identify some milestones with some target dates, so people have a little better opportunity of what to expect. And some of these are going to be, for lack of a better term, like I mentioned, Lisa doing working with special ed, are going to be more targeted to those audiences. So some activities need to be and should be ongoing, and while they will be published, I envision those conversations are going to be evolving based on who attends and future questions and those things. But yeah, we can put target dates together, and I think we've got to make sure we understand that that's exactly what they are, target dates, and some of the factors that may turn a target date into a rough draft date are going to be out of our control. That was one of the concerns we heard, last year. Folks who said, okay, the Princeton plan, we understand grade level organization, there are a lot of benefits. We don't know enough information about the pandemic, or would we be able to do this with some of the limited opportunities we have to have foot traffic in buildings. So those are just some considerations we'll have to
Yeah, I think, but I also just worry that when we don't put the plan out there, people have a lot more questions and concerns.
Mhm.
So I do think
Yep.
that we have to. I do think without the plan, it just creates more questions and concerns.
Oh, no,
So-
I'm not disagreeing. Just some of the things we wanted to achieve, we haven't been able to yet because of some of those outside forces. But that doesn't mean we can't have milestones and let parents know what to expect. We can work on that as early as tomorrow with our principals.
Okay.
I just wanted to comment that I completely agree with you, Jen. I think parents need to know what to expect, and as a group, it helps hold us accountable so nothing gets lost along the way. We need to make sure that we're delivering what we said we were.
Anybody else before we move on? Okay.
Yeah, my second update is a COVID update, moving from one topic to the other here. We have received COVID tests. They are slowly trickling in, and will continue to over the next couple weeks, was our email that we received earlier tonight. We also received an email earlier tonight from the Department of Health that had some adjustments to an update that they provided on January 14th. You can't make this up. So what we do know is that earlier today we distributed COVID tests to all 5 of our schools. And we worked very closely with the nurses to create a protocol to distribute COVID tests based on 2 initial criteria. First are children who are at school that are exhibiting symptoms will be sent home, as they always have been, with a COVID test if parents choose to accept it. The COVID test that we received, we had absolutely no role or no input in what we received, but the COVID test we received basically come in a box, maybe the size of an iPhone, a little wide. If you stack 2 iPhones on top of one another, the box is about as big as 2 iPhones. And in that box are 2 COVID tests. So we have absolutely no way of separating the 2 COVID tests because of how they're packaged. So if families receive a COVID test, they'll actually get 2 of them. So symptomatic students will be sent home with a COVID kit, is what they're called, with 2 tests. Children who are home and families who have sick children at home that would like to request a COVID test can also request a kit. Our nurses are sending those communications out to families. Some of you may have received one even today. So those are the 2 criteria. Actively sick children in school and children who are sick and at home. We also are providing it based on the criteria given to us for staff as well. And the whole idea or the whole interest is to use the COVID test to control spread within the building. These are not, the tests are not given to us as a mandate to test everyone before they come back to school. It's not for a community testing initiative. It's to try to control the spread of the virus within the school. The third group of testing that we will do are for parents who previously provided consent. If you remember, we asked for parents to fill out a digital form online for their children to be tested in school. We have about, between our families and staff, we have about 260 that completed consent. And then the rules changed. Rather than being tested in school, the test came to the school district to distribute to those families. So we're going to identify those folks that previously raised their hand toward the end of 2021 and provide them an opportunity to receive a COVID kit as well, because they previously gave authorization and consent for their children to be tested. It's important for me to talk about the distinction of where children are being tested. Our priority was to provide the test to families, so the families can administer them where they see fit, in the safety of their own home, and with a mom and dad administering it. That is actually a much quicker way than having children lined up outside the nurse's office and testing them one by one, and then having to wait 15 minutes for the results. Because once you're tested, you really should be in an isolation room, or you really shouldn't be in the general population. So for efficiency purposes, that's why we're going that way, to give the test kits to the family and let the families administer them how they see fit. They are an antigen test, they're a rapid test, they're a saliva test, so they're not very difficult. And yes, what the research has told us is that those rapid tests are not as accurate as a PCR test, but the vision from the governor and the State Department of Health was some information is better than no information. And the last piece I'll talk about is a trend that we are seeing in the state, and it's test avoidance. There is a growing trend in schools of families not to test their children because this strain of the virus doesn't necessarily show symptoms, and that the criteria are still the same. If you test positive, you're out at least 5 days. And some families are choosing to not test their children if they have the opportunity, because their children are asymptomatic and are able to function just fine. So that's one of the reasons I saw some eyebrows move when I said that we had only about 260 families provide consent at the end of 21. That's 260 families and staff. We have about 400 full-time staff, and we have 2,200 students. So that number is pretty low. But one of the themes we're hearing from health department, both the state and the county, are that there is an element of test avoidance. But we have received the tests. They have been distributed, available to all staff and students that are demonstrating symptoms. And as long as the tests keep coming, we may be able to loosen some of that criteria and just provide tests for families that want them for peace of mind. We're not there yet, and the reason is because the state hasn't guaranteed how many tests we're going to receive. We've received about 1,700 so far. Those, as I said, were pushed out to schools. We're anticipating maybe over the next month, maybe 1,400 more, but that is, that's what the state is telling BOCES. BOCES is the regional distributor of the tests, and we get an email as soon as they arrive, and we pick them up as quickly as we can. So we're moving. The needle is moving, and so check your email, and you'll receive an email either from your principal or your school nurse in terms of that process. But I do want to make clear that it is not a mistake that if you receive a test kit at home, there are 2 tests in there. Our nurses, and I wholeheartedly agree with them, they did not want to compromise the kit by opening it and then having 2 different, handing out tests and students bringing home, loose material. So that's why they were packaged 2 in a kit, and that's what we're going to hand out.
Plus, there's probably only instructions
Yes,
on the
correct.
copy in there.
Yep.
For us to split those. So for the 200 plus people that had agreed to get tests prior, are we intending those to be surveillance tests for that group since they're not symptomatic and may not have been exposed, et cetera, or what's the rationale for that?
Well, we don't know that we're going to have enough. We don't know that the supply is going to come to the district regularly enough to have that be surveillance testing, predictable surveillance testing. That was the vision last October, was surveillance testing for all, and then as this wave hit, PCR tests were less reliable, the labs were taking longer, and the feedback was, if we're going to surveillance test everybody, and we don't know for 5 days that kids tested positive, the contact tracing is going to be enormous. You're going to end up closing schools again. So what we wanted to do was provide test kits for those families because they were interested in knowing. And so, we felt it was important to say, okay, you showed an interest in having an opportunity, for regular testing, whether it's weekly surveillance or regular in terms of however often our supply permits us to provide them. So I always shy away from surveillance testing because that suggests that it is, regular and predictable, and I cannot guarantee that we will receive tests regularly or predictably from the state.
All right, thank you. Yeah.
Joe, could you just talk for a minute about contact tracing and the evolution of that and where we're at right now with it? Because I know things have been changing so rapidly with that.
Yeah, so contact tracing is the function of the school district on behalf of the Department of Health to identify anyone who meets the county's criteria to be quarantined. If you were in proximity of someone who tested positive, within a certain distance, last year it was 3 feet, or last year it was 6 feet, now it's 3 feet. If you were within that proximity for 15 minutes over the contagion period, which could be 1 day, 2 days, or 3 days, we identified those students, we sent a report to the state, and we directed those children and adults to stay home. What happened in late December and so far early January, the spike in positivity rates coupled with lower, less severe symptoms overran the system. And I believe it was Putnam County was one of the first, then Dutchess, then Rockland just said, we don't have the staff to keep this up. Now that was also at a time when the State Department of Health was reducing the quarantine period. It used to be 14 days, then 10 days, and now it's 5 days, or depending on your vaccination status. So with that change in guidance, and with all of the work everyone was doing in contact tracing, sometimes by the time you finish contact tracing, your 5 days would have been up anyway. And I believe what the state and county departments of health said, that's not how we should use our staff. We should use our staff for vaccines, for boosters, and to support testing. So that evolved quickly. And so that's why families may not receive a call from the district or particularly the health department for those reasons, that they have fewer people that are manning those phones. And we also have fewer kids who are being exposed because of masking, because of social distancing, so on and so forth. This trend started earlier this year when the Department of Health changed their guideline for quarantine of fully vaccinated individuals. That they started to loosen up a little to say, if you're fully vaccinated, you don't need to sit out the full quarantine period. You can come back so long as you're asymptomatic. Now, who determines whether you're symptomatic or not? It's yourself, or in our case, in terms of 5 schools, the nurse. And we have had some disagreements with families where a teacher or a nurse or bus driver would say this child is, sweating, sneezing, throwing up, you name it, and that's a burden on families to stop what they're doing and pick up their children. But it's all in the name of trying to control the spread. The testing will help. It will give parents peace of mind quickly that maybe it is or isn't COVID, or just a cold or whatever. But those families will have a little more information than they've used to in terms of how they treat their children at home and whether they're isolating from other family members. But the needle has moved, certainly quite a bit. I would say the needle has moved a little bit because of science, and we've learned a little bit more about this strain. But also, it's no secret that the county, at the county level, the Department of Health, they can't do two things at once. They can't try to continue to support vaccinations and boosters and testing and man the phones and call families and send out those documents.
Thank you.
I have a follow-up question, but do you mind? So once upon a time, we used to get an email from the school saying there was a case at Blue Mountain Middle, there's people who are quarantining, and I haven't seen one of those in a long time. Is that because kids aren't sick, or we're not doing that anymore?
Well, we're slowly moving away from those notices only if children are in quarantine. And that's part of the change in the state guidance is whether or not schools are contact tracing and then what the notice is. So we used to send, I'll go back a year ago, we used to email the whole district of a case that happened, in a school, and we learned the hard way that over-communicating sometimes isn't well received either. So then we tried to narrow it, emailing the school community saying there was a positive case, contact tracing is complete. Now it is only to those who are most affected, if there is a need to quarantine.
Okay.
I think at one point, at our highest peak in December, we had maybe 12 children district-wide in quarantine. And we were notifying everyone, and that was fine. But with the changes in contact tracing and quarantining, it's only those families that are recommended to quarantine are the nurses or the school secretary or the principal's calling.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Bill.
No problem. The number of tests that we initially got, how many was that?
I want to say we did the math today, 1770,
Yeah. What I'm getting at, you say they come two in a box. So basically, we're giving that 1,700 away two at a time, or is it 1,700 kits?
90 kits in a box of 2 tests. So 1770 is the total number of tests.
And we're giving away two at a time. So in
That's a big
effect,
difference.
we have 850 to give out.
Kits. Yes. And received a few more today, and as I said, I didn't look at it in detail, but got another heads up that more tests are coming with our name on it.
Okay, and then with these kits, are the instructions in multiple languages?
English and Spanish, and also I believe that the kits we received, and I don't have a picture on me, on their website there are 6 or 8 other languages that folks who don't speak English or Spanish can log on, or go onto the website to read the instructions in other languages.
Is that something the district could possibly be proactive, like if they know it's a Russian family, that they can print the Russian instructions and send it with the kit?
That was one of the conversations we had with with our lead nurse who was coordinating the protocol. Let me check in with her to see if we know of families that speak some of those unique languages, to make sure that the testing company has that previously translated on the website.
Because they may not know where to look, and you want to make it as easy as possible for them to be successful with this.
Yeah, that's also why it wasn't just a wide distribution of, everyone mad rush come and get it. The tests there's a chain of custody for these tests, that they are being delivered or handed to a parent or guardian. So they come in, they sign for it, we have a log of who came, when they came, and who signed for the test. Same thing with staff. So there's, in terms of the families who are going to receive tests, there's an exchange, a dialogue. It's not just put it in the kid's backpack and go home.
Okay, thank you, Joe.
Is there any other discussions of any other metrics or ways of returning to a more normal? Any discussions about reducing masks or what would be needed to reduce masks?
The Lower Hudson Superintendent's Council sent a letter to the governor and the acting commissioner saying that as this wave slows down, and the data are saying that it's slowing down, we're urging the governor and the commissioner of health to create those metrics. Because the one size fits all throughout the state, we've seen that that worked and that hasn't. And where the wave had been since the onset almost 2 years ago, we got it first and the state was shut down, and my friends in Western New York said this is stupid until the wave got to Western New York and we were in a different boat. So we've called for metrics around masking. We've called for metrics around school community positivity rate to allow schools to operate differently based on their community positivity rate, maybe not even the county. If you remember last year, the governor at the time had green, yellow, and red designations with a goal of creating a metric to say if you're in a green designation, you have a low infection rate, you may be afforded different liberties or different restrictions. That never really got off the ground because then the positivity rate went through the roof. And the thought at the time was to say, that you still have transmission. That while the Hendrick Hudson school community may have a lower transmission rate or a lower positivity rate, a great number of our staff, particularly our teachers, don't live in our school community, let alone our county. And so the question was, well, if Jen lives in Wappingers and Wappingers has a high infection rate, do you have to wear a mask? But I don't because I live around the corner from the middle school. Now, who's going to manage that? So those were some of the concerns. But we did put a letter together saying that there need to be metrics. There needs to be a pathway out of some of this, and that our group would work with whomever to create some of those metrics or criteria.
Did you get a response?
Not yet.
Okay.
That letter went out on Friday, maybe.
Okay.
All the days run into one another. The letter was actually prepared. The version of the letter was prepared in early December, and thank goodness we didn't send it because that's really when it got crazy. So timing is everything. But the interest is there, to try to create a metric. So that there's a roadmap. Going back to what you said, there's an expectation of what our short, long-term future might look like.
Thank you.
And I say that while other agencies within New York State are tightening up. So we received a notice today that certain athletic championships that are going to take place in large venues are requiring not only parents and spectators, but athletes to be vaccinated. So while we're trying to, move down one pathway to a vision of loosening up and a return to normal, there still are some concerns, particularly in athletics, that being vaccinated is going to be a criteria to continue to compete. So, there are dueling, dueling priorities or messages right now.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you, yeah, and thank you to the Lower Hudson Education Council for sending that message. We all could use a little bit more predictability and knowing what to expect. All right, that brings us to our presentation tonight, which is our Pupil Personnel Services budget. I'm going to ask the trustees to hold your questions till the end of the presentation, and then we'll go around and welcome opportunities to ask questions.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. It's nice to see everybody. So I'm glad I'm able to come and be the first presenter. It's very exciting to be first and not be last. So we are here. Greg, you go to the next slide, please. So we're going to talk a little bit. We always talk numbers, which I think is great and it's very important. But let's talk about programs that we offer here at Hendrick Hudson. I think the programs that we have for a district our size are immense. And I'm really proud of the teachers that we have that run those programs because they've made some serious contributions and changes as we've run through COVID. So I'm just going to quickly overview what some of them are because some of them are new versus just a related service is OT, PT, and speech or counseling. So our students are offered that. Consultant teacher, students could be direct or indirect. It's now K through 12 that we use consultant teacher. So we have teachers pushing into the classrooms, we have them holding small groups, it's up to 2 hours a week for that model. Resource room, primarily in elementary and high school. We're talking about that for the middle school at this point as well. It's every day for 40 minutes or 30 minutes, depending on the grade level. Kids are pulled out into small groups of more than 5. ICT, or integrated co-teacher, we have a full day program at the elementary school. We actually only have one section of this, K-5. So students are in a gen ed program alongside the special ed teacher all day long. We also have a skills model K-5. And when I first came, the teachers were really concerned. We had one size fits all for all students, and we had to start looking at kids differently. And what do kids need? So we brought all the K-5 teachers together, I believe it was 3 years ago. And we looked at kids individually. What do they need? How does it look? What do you want it to look like? What programs do we offer? So we came up with 2 different models. We came up with the traditional ICT. We came up with an ICT skills 2 hours a day, which means the students are in a gen ed program for 2 hours and in a self-contained 811 with their special ed teacher and a teaching assistant working on gaps, working on IEP goals. They may be pre-teaching and front-loading information, so when kids go into the classroom, they feel so much more confident. And I'll talk about that on the next slide. We've also, due to the Princeton plan and prepping for next year, some students need a little bit more, but we didn't want to move buildings yet again. So we did create a 3-hour skills this year, where they're in the gen ed program for about 3 hours a day, 1 hour a day, and then the 3 hours they're with their special ed teacher. So these are traditionally kids that would be in a more restrictive environment, but due to the Princeton plan, we felt that it wasn't okay to move kids again. So we really made a program for these students, and they are primarily at BB this year, and so next year they'll transition to the middle school. We have our ABC program, K to 12 I call it, but it does go to 21. I will tell you, I think this is probably our biggest success. The teachers have really taken on a lot. And last year they said, Lisa, let's look at this, and we don't need an 813, we need a 612 for our K kids coming in. As we know, COVID hit us hard. COVID hit our little ones, our youngest ones in early intervention, and our Cpsc kids the hardest. I don't know if you know of a 3-year-old who can sit on a computer for the day to get related services or instruction. And even as we transitioned back to school, related service providers did not go home. Whether it was See It, which is your special ed teacher that is itinerant, or whether it's speech, OT, and PT, they wouldn't go into the home. The parents didn't want them in the home. So we're talking about kids that didn't get related services. So as I've shared, I think last year, and I'll say it again, I sound like a broken record, but we will see for the next 3 to 5 years serious impacts on our students. And our job is to figure out how to close those gaps and work with these students. And I think our teams have really made an amazing contribution on how to best address them. So my ABC teachers, K to 5, came together and said, we need a 612, which means we need to get these kids ready for kindergarten. We need to teach them how to be kindergartners. So these students came in, they're in our kindergarten class with Ms. Treza, and we were basically able to move some kids around because they grew so much in just 5 minutes of school. So they've really done a lot of work. The collaboration that goes into those programs is amazing. And we have been very fortunate. I shared last night at our finance committee that every ABC program at this point, but one position in the K to 5 and one in the middle school is full. We have a waiting list. We have parent districts asking us for placement. I don't have placement. I literally have 2 intakes this week, one this week and one next week, for that one position in K-5. So it tells you that Hunter Crescent is doing an amazing job. Our staff, our related service, our teachers, our social workers, psychologists, they are working very hard and making huge gains with our students and also transitioning them to less restricted. We had a young lady just recently moved from an ABC class to a 12.1. That's amazing. That's awesome. It's so exciting to hear. So these little stories we don't talk enough about. We talk a lot about numbers when we come here, and I said to Joe, I'm kind of changing things up this year because I think we need to talk about teachers and we need to talk about students because what have they done? We'll talk about numbers too, trust me. They didn't want to get away with that. So we started a 12.1 probably 2 years ago. Again, the incoming kindergartners we know needed more support. These are students sometimes that we would send out of district. So we said, let's talk about this. We're prepping for Princeton plan, so at Furnace Woods, we have a K1 and a 2-3, let's get ready. And it literally means what it says, let's get ready. These kids are COVID students coming in. They weren't ready to be students. They just couldn't handle the transitions from class to class. They couldn't handle going to music, going to art. We actually have to have some of the specials come into the classes. Again, amazing work. We have social workers assigned to the classrooms. We have our behaviorist assigned to everything. That for behaviorist is all over the district. But we've been able to address and help students. Am I saying it's perfect? I'm not saying anything's perfect, but we have really gotten to some of the core needs of our students. So that is a 12-on-1. We also have a 12-on-1 that we started, I think, the year before the K1 in Frank G, and that's a 4-5 class. Again, there'll be a K1, a 2, 3, and a 4-5 in each building. We didn't want to separate them yet again, so some of those students that are sitting at BB that might need the 12-on-1, we did not want to move them again, and we get it. But it was in the best interest of students. That's why we create programs. We have an amazing assistive technology team. If you don't know what that means, is we have an OT and a speech. Part of their day, one day of the week, is to work with our students with disabilities in the school and my students at BOCES that I place at BOCES to evaluate their needs. Do they need, for my students in wheelchairs, do they need a holder for their iPad? Do they need a stand? Do they need a stander? Things to that nature. Kids in district, do they need an iPad? If they need an iPad, what program is it? How do they do that? They sit and they work with students and do trials. It could be as easy as a slant board. It could be different types of Post-its. It could be layovers. So assistive technology goes from very basic to very, very sophisticated, where they explain it to me quite often. But that's their specialty. We send them to a huge amount of training. Our BOCES is amazing at giving us this training for our staff. And you will find that the two of them, along with our PT, has made gains. If we were to send this out, it's anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000 each evaluation. And then on top of that, you have the professional development to teach everybody. We have our own in-house staff. It's amazing, the stuff that they've done for students. I had an evaluation done for a student that I have in an out-of-district program. So I looked at the provider and I said, so tell me about your trials. What did you get? And they're like, what trials? And I just kind of went, okay, we need to look at this differently because we're not really getting to what the kids need. We're getting to what they want to promote and what they want to get us PD on. And our 3 staff members took this on and they've been amazing. They can be called on just to go and look at a kid and give a quick suggestion. It's wonderful. Work-based learning has been very difficult in a time of COVID. So we came back last year. The ABCs at the high school loved being there on Wednesdays because nobody else was there. Like, can we do this like every Wednesday? Can we just send everybody else home and just have the building? They were able to navigate. They were able to set kids up for different scenarios. It was great. So along with our 2 programs, we have done the Spotlight program. I'm not sure if you've purchased anything, but we have Spotlight where our students is actually a company outside of school. She works with adults with disabilities. They make jewelry and they sell it. So we were able to become part of that. So our staff in the Sailor 2, the older students have been making bracelets. So they did one last spring, it was blue, I believe. At Christmas, they did a red one. So again, these are items they're selling, they're learning different skills. They've created work bins for their classrooms of different scenarios. So when they're ready, they can transition out to the community. So we've had in-house where they've done copying. They have done laminating. I'm actually getting ready to teach them how to, or send over information on how to fold things. We get huge packets that we have to send home to every special ed kid. So as a packet goes home, we're going to have them start folding and getting things prepped in an envelope. And all we have to do is put the legal documents, our personal confidential documents in. So there's a lot of stuff they do. We have been very, very fortunate with Premier Athletics. Our students are going in and they're actually working at Premier 5 days a week. They're working with in the tennis area, they're sorting balls, they're cleaning, they're organizing, and these kids are doing it on their own. They were taught how to do it, and it's just amazing to see the work. As our younger kids are doing the school enterprise with the dog treats, and they're selling those and learning that business, they're also going to Adelino's and working in the pizza area. So a lot of that is happening, and we're getting ready for these guys to go. Our older kids, there's a lot getting ready to graduate. We have 2 graduating this year, followed by a large number over the next 2 years. So we really need to start looking at that class and how do we prep them for that next level education. When they leave us, they're not leaving us with related services and other adults to assist them in the community. OPWDD, and I know I use these terms all the time, it's the Office for People with Developmental Disabilities. They'll come and they'll help us and they'll train, and they're placed, these students are placed on their skills. So the more skills we can offer students, not just in Sailor, they could be our special ed kids in a regular program, the easier it's going to be for them to be employable. We call that employability. So we're really pushing that this year, and when we get to staffing, because I did ask for a lot of staffing this year, that's a big thing for us, is to how do we get all of our kids ready for school, or excuse me, for post-21. Go ahead, Greg. So I said that, I want to talk a little bit about teachers and what they share with students. So I'm not going to read this to you. I'm just going to overview it, but just talking about collaboration, it's huge, especially as we're planning for this transition. Parents want to know that their staff is going with them, their OT, their PT, and their speech. Can I guarantee that? No. Did I try my best? Absolutely. Does that mean there won't be flaws? No, there's always going to be a flaw. But we did our best in placing people. And just that communication is huge, and that collaboration amongst those teams. Our assistive tech I talked about, the 612, Mrs. Spearman is our art teacher for that class. The way she modifies, differentiates, you would walk in that class and those kids are in seventh heaven doing art. So these are things we want to celebrate. I didn't put this in here, but one of our teachers shared student statements. I love skills because I'm learning what I need to know when I go in that class. I now raise my hand, I'm reading class. I answer questions. These are huge for us. For our kids to feel as if they can go in and be part of the class, and people don't just look at them, they don't look at the teacher for answers. It's just amazing to see the transformation in some of these students. In middle school, we've had many of the students published for poems. We've had a student that was actually published in the Discovering Foundation Poetry magazine. Those are great things for our students. High school, we started a supplement class where our students are really working on homework. The problem is we transitioned from middle school, they were probably 6th and 7th graders, and they're now in 9th and 10th grade, and they had homework in COVID, but now they're in high school, and it's bigger, right? They're credit bearing, you have to do your homework. This is a way that we're starting to teach kids some of those executive functioning skills, how to organize, time management, what do you need to do, prioritize. It's really nice to see our co-teachers are trying some different co-teaching models. And just the engagement of the students is different because we are in person, which we all knew. But yes, we wanted to keep some remote options for students, for those but this in person is face to face. We're not on the computer all the time. I don't know about you, but when I sit on a day of doing Google Meets, I'm exhausted. I can't imagine being 15 and trying to participate in Focus, or 12, or 3, or 7. So that's, some stories. There's so much more out there. They sent me pictures and videos, which I can't put up here because it identifies. But just if you see some of these students welcoming into the high school or the middle school, seeing them work in tandem in a kitchen or just having conversations in a classroom, it's amazing to see the changes. It's so nice to be back in person. So as we go ahead, Greg, please. As we go into our district initiatives, it's very different what I'm asking for this year because we do have the Let's Get Ready program in place. We've started that. We're building that. We're continuing with that. But that is something we really put into place as a therapeutic piece this year. Our 612 we're going to continue. SAL in the middle school is a new position. That is something, again, talking about the COVID impact. We have some students coming up into 6th grade that right now are the ones that I kind of talked about in different elementary classes that really need some more support. They're not ready for all those transitions. They're not ready for 8 different teachers. So we've really talked about how do we put this together so it doesn't impact the students and they're going to continue that learning model. So Mr. Marino and I have been working in collaboration with the middle school to develop a program. So it's going to be a 12-on-1. We are going to, our hopes is to have the classroom be together for the 4 contents, and then they'll push out for everything else, but their home base will be this classroom teacher. And it'll be the teacher that can actually help work with work, teach them strategies for executive functioning. It will also work on her IEP goals, which is really important, getting some really strong foundation reading under their belt. As I said, we started this work-based learning coach and transition coach. That person actually, Mrs. Field, actually just started this week with this position, so she's been doing quite a few things, but we're getting things ready. We're working with Joe to get with the Montrose Business Association to find some more out of school positions for our students. We're going to continue to develop in-house for our students that aren't ready to go out, but there's also some out-of-district stuff that we can definitely be doing, and our kids could be supporting our community as well. Really working on those functional programs and curriculums. I have done a lot of training in this last year. Margaret and I work so collaboratively together, but one of the things that I'm finding is we need more tools in our toolbox for our special ed teachers with reading. So we've really worked on PAF. We've worked on just words and words their way, so we've been doing a lot of training on that. Continuing obviously with the Wilson. I don't push LOI because it's proven that it really is not the best thing for special ed students, but some students are successful with that. So we've really been working collaboratively to find that new curriculum in order to ensure our students are still moving as we go through. Again, we're continuing through that COVID model. So it's really interesting because Bill was kind of asking me questions about where were we years ago. And I think Margaret and I were telling in our out-of-district SPED students, we had, I think, close to 30 with the first year I came in 17, 18. So when you talk about 30 kids out of district, depending where they are, you're talking anywhere from, I would say $50,000 to $85,000 per student out of district. So that's a BOCES program, that could be a special ed school, it could be any of the out-of-district programs that are approved by New York State. And it's really interesting because I was having a conversation with somebody, and I used to be the director at Southern Westchester BOCES, and I remember the the tuitions. And I could not believe when I saw Westchester or Northern versus Southern, the difference in tuitions. And it is pretty extreme when you're talking anywhere from 50 to 85. That can also come with an additional cost. If you're a residential student, there's also part of the maintenance that you pay. And there's more and more fees added on if you're a Cpsc student. There's other fees that you have to pay the county. So there's lots of costs that are kind of hidden. I use the word hidden. We can use our grants for, which is wonderful, but we also have to remember that we have to budget for that each year. So the more CPS kids we get, the more we need to remember to SEDFAR, which is our special ed fund that we have to pay our county. So last year we had 13 students. We're anticipating 10 next year out of district. I'm hoping with the new SAL program I can bring 2 students back from BOCES. That was a great conversation I had with a parent today. So it's nice to be able to have these conversations because I actually placed a student the other day and the parent said, I said, well, we'll review this in June. We'll see how he's doing. But, you know, one of the things is that, you know, he's a hen ed student. Like it's this grade, he can do this and this. And I said, and we'll review to come back. And she said, well, he won't be out of district forever. And I go, oh, no, that's not the way it works. So I think that's part of a mentality from years ago. But my goal is to let's work on what you need to work on and let's bring it back. And I think that's really important. So in district, this year we had about 370 when we started the school year. Next year we're looking at 338, but I did not add in the Cpsc kids because at the time that I did this, so I'm doing my presentation a month earlier than I typically do. So at the time I did this we had 42. I can tell you between then and now I'm closer to 52. So CPSC, we're finding students that are being classified that are 4-year-olds that didn't get services due to parents didn't want to live at home. We are also finding, as Margaret also finds, that when we do kindergarten registration, we're finding kids that didn't attend preschool and are not in a preschool program, and some of them have the highest needs. So this is based on the number of kids that we know and we are classifying. It's not based on the number of students that we don't know that are coming in kindergarten. That number also could just be related services, or it could be your itinerant special education teacher. We do know that preschools are letting us start to come in, even if it's one person at a time. It's really beneficial for us to go in and see the student. But what we have done last year, probably about April or May, I had asked Penn Free Library to help us out. We need to see students, we need to be able to place them appropriately. So we've actually asked parents to bring students to our staff, our teachers, our related service providers, and we were able to say, yes, this is the type of program they need. Yes, so we're going to try that again this year. I know Margaret's doing her case screening. We do a little bit more in depth for these little ones because we want to see where we can put them. We have a plethora of programs or no program and just related services, and that's the way we like to go. Typically, Ellen will tell you, she's the assistant director of the elementary, that probably half of the students would be classified or just students with related services. but due to COVID, we're finding that that's not happening. So typically we have one ICT in kindergarten. We're planning at least 2 at this point, plus our Let's Get Ready program and our ABC program. Which leads us to the best slide of all, is our budget, the actual money piece of it. So it's an interesting year for budgeting. So in our salaries, you'll find that teacher aides and assistants went up, and how I shared this with Mr. Hochreiter is that this is typically students that are coming in from an out-of-district and they're paying tuition. They are paying for these aides and assistants, but they're in our budget. So we are getting that money back. And our teacher salaries are going up close to 5%. Hopefully that contract passes, it's part of that raise. But it's also the fact that we do need some more staff in the school. So one of the things that Mr. Harper talked about was the mental health and the transition of kids from K1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And one of the things that we discussed is we really need to look at our mental health teams, but also our school counselors. So in my budget, I've also asked for another social worker and a school counselor. And those positions will not be posted until after the budget passes, when the budget passes, because those are new positions. But our intention would be to have a full-time social worker at every elementary building, and we would have school psychologists in each building, but it would be a certain part of the day. And a school counselor would be a K1, 2, and a 3, 4, 5, which would help transition. So we really would like that staff to help there. We do need to create another ABC program. As I said, our programs are full, and I have waiting lists. I literally had a district, I don't know what county it is, I geographically have issues, but north of us that basically asked me if they could send me 4 packets. And I said, great, how about in the fall? I said, I have no room now. They're like, but I can send you 4. I said, I have 1 space. I said, so you can send 1, but then you're sending a bus down here for 1 student, or you can wait till the fall and we can talk about the 4 packets. So I know the program's needed. It's in a school building. It's with typical students. It's integrated. It's not a separate location like a BOCES. So it's very, it's very palatable to parents. Parents want something like that. They don't want to be in a self-contained building at BOCES. And I understand that. So you'll see those increases. Secretary salaries, that's just part of the budget. You'll see equipment drop by 66.67%, and then below that, you'll see the materials and supplies went up by 150%. So let me just explain that. So I took my equipment money and I actually put most of it in my supply money this year. It's the same dollar amount. We're finding that when we first started with equipment money, we needed new furniture. We needed iPads. We needed specialized equipment for kids. So we needed all of that. But I'm finding more and more now it's the materials and supplies, the reading kits, the bins to create our job vocational skills in the schools. So I just flipped them because we can't use some of this money for equipment. Equipment is specifically designated for, I think it's $1,000 or more. It's got to be not tangible. So we just flipped those around. So we would put the money just in opposite codes. Contractual expenditures, we love our postal machine and our copier. It's just what we have to do as part of special ed. Hospital tutoring did not go up. That is, we pay for students to get education if they go to a Four Winds, a St. Vincent's. We are responsible for their education. So a tutor goes in and tutors them. Tuition didn't change. Contractual expenditures, so those are my related services. So if I send people to training for PAF, it's quite expensive, or Wilson or DBT, that's the fund that comes out of. And it's not getting any cheaper. Tuition for other public schools, as you see, went down 28.57%. That is, I have kids graduating, but I can't just say, oh, I don't need that anymore, because I always have to anticipate there might be somebody else out there. So we have a student in we have 2 students in 2 different public schools. They're both graduating this year, so we can reduce that tuition. Private schools, we reduced that tuition. We have a couple kids graduating there. Services from BOCES, so you have the services, but then you have the related services from BOCES. So services from BOCES are our programs. So any child that goes to Northern, Southern, or Putnam, there's a charge for that. There's a charge for that, and then you have the related services on top of that. So that's part of this related services underneath it. But it's also our very specialized people, teachers who are visually impaired, our hearing impaired teachers, our orientation and mobility teachers, if we have a sign language, if we have a student that needs an interpreter, it would be there. If we need someone to come and do a specific PD, it would come typically from BOCES. If I have to rent an OT or PT because we're short like 2 sessions, I would get them through BOCES. All this is aidable, which is nice, we get aid back on it. So using BOCES is also wonderful because it's a shared service, so you're not always paying that one person's salary. Transportation went up 2%. That again goes back to gas prices or diesel prices, our work-based learning, any community-based instruction, which is a lot for our students with disabilities. We do a lot of community-based for our special classes. And then we're looking at a total of 3.72% increase. Our next page is all of our revenues. So when you talk about revenues, it's interesting because I'll be honest with you, I don't know where this money goes when it comes in, but that's okay. So it goes into a fund, and I'm sure it's used to cover a lot of our budgets. But the IDA is a federal grant we get. Every school district gets it. So it's a 619 and 611. So if you hear say 619, that's for my kids that are 3 to 5 years old. We get a very small portion. We get about $20,000. That typically goes for the Cpsc secretary, and another portion goes for SEDCAR, which is that fund that I tell you that we have to pay Westchester for. That's part of that money too. 611 is for our kids that are 5 to 21. This is the highest I've seen it since I've been here. We were over 600,000 this year. I'm estimating, maybe 614 next year. I can't ever estimate. It really is going to depend, but I put an estimate in there. Our staff is what we get back for funding for high-cost students. So our threshold is $65,000. So if a program costs $65,000, we get a certain percentage of that back. So for Cpsc, this is the first time I've ever seen that we've gotten staffing for Cpsc, and it's $52,000 this year. For school age, about $94,000. We usually go anywhere from $94,000 to $100,000 depending on our needs of our students. So if you have a student in out of district and a one-to-one aid and this, and this, you're going to find that you're going to get staff back on that student. We pay someone to do that. It's called Quest ROCs. I just smile and nod my head because the explanation of it is so huge and they dive so deep into everything. It's great that they do it, and that's their expertise. I'm estimating next year, I'm not going up a lot, obviously, and it probably is going to be more than I'm estimating, but that's just an estimate. Tuition of ABC, we're looking at $1.3 million this year. That is about an estimate because when I did this again, it was before Enrique did all of his tuition billing. I think it might be a little bit more, but we'll stick with 1.3. I think that's pretty good. Next year, I'm anticipating 1.59, which I'm sure is going to be higher than that. But again, you want to estimate, you don't want to over predict. ICT tuition. So this is, when I came, Joe and I talked a lot about this. I said, people are asking me, we have small districts around here that don't have ICT. So you have like a Garrison, Canco Hills, they don't have programs. Their schools are this big, right? So they'll reach out to us and they'll say, do you have this? And I'm like, oh, it sounds like one of our ICT programs or our 1511 programs. So they do pay for tuition to come here. So we have, I think it's 4 students we're up to K to 8 that are either in ICT or special classes at 1511s. So the revenue that we're bringing in just from that right now is $2,270,385,000. And that's the estimate for next year. Again, that's an estimate. I can never guarantee. I can say that we will have a huge growth in ABC, but then all of a sudden it may go dry for a little bit. So all of that is there, but these are estimates. Then we have the IDEA grant. So our 611, 619, this is what I talked about on the prior slide. So you have your Cpsc and you have your, and you have your 5 to 21. So your 619 is your small grant. It goes to our salaries, as I talked about, purchase services. That's the services we pay for if a kid needs something outside of school, we purchase that. And then you have your IDA 611. So that's where most of our professional salaries go. So I work with Enrique and I will say, here's how much money we have, give me this, this, and this, and I can put these staff in our salary, in our grant. So they used to be that we would put supplies in there, but when Enrique and I talked, I said, you understand we can get aid back on supplies, but if it's in a grant, you can't get aid back. So we kind of switched out. So we do the salaries in here, and then we budget for supplies. Purchase services could be anything from professional development, bringing in an outside company. It could be any trainings teachers want to go to. A BOCE service for this grant was when Margaret and I worked together to bring in a work-based learning person from BOCES. Unfortunately, COVID kind of shut that down, so we haven't used that money, so it rolls over. So if we don't use the funds, they roll over, and they keep it in a rollover account. So if it comes to the fall and I say, oh, how much do I have in my rollover? They'll say X, Y, Z, and I'll say, okay, I'm going to do an FS10A, and then I can spend that money. So this year I had, I think it was $60,000. That's how we were able to get the work-based learning. So we were able to take that coach's position and use that funds towards part of her salary this year. And I think that's it. So I gave you a lot of information, I talked a lot at you, but please feel free to ask questions or not, that's up to you.
Thank you, Lisa. That was a very comprehensive budget report with extras. I love the extras. So let me go around the table, see if anybody has any questions. Bill, you want to start?
Just wanted to thank you, Lisa. Finance Committee went through this presentation last night already, and very comprehensive. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lisa, do you have any questions?
Just to echo Bill's, thank you very much, Lisa. It's really, it's a lot to take
It
in,
is,
to be honest.
I think it's important that you know soup to nuts.
Yeah, no, it's very helpful to hear all of that and to see the really wonderful work that's been happening with our district. I think that's.
I mean, there's always more to do, but I'm really impressed with, even with COVID, how hard our teachers are working. And it really needs, I say it to them all the time, you know, but I think it's important that we continue to say it because it's been a difficult 2 years.
Thank you.
Thank you. It'd be nice if some of them were here as well this evening so we could thank them as well. Jen? Questions?
Thank you. I think you answered a lot of questions I had. So a few things I wanted to ask your opinion so the additional social worker and counselor, do you envision that do you envision all students having access to that or only, okay.
No. Right now, we have one school counselor elementary, and if you haven't met her, you don't know what you're missing. She's phenomenal. She works with all 900 students. And if I asked her, can you tell me about Margaret Roller? Oh, well, let me tell you, and she just rattles it off. This is her 3rd year here. She started, and she was only in a couple buildings when the new mandate came. And then we kicked off second step. Then we kicked off zones of regulation. So she was just taking these and taking them to a new level. So she shares out videos with families. So everybody has access to her, and they will continue to have access. It's part of the law for school counselors, but social workers, anybody has access to them, even right now.
And then, so the IDEA grant, so if it is in fact a function of need-based, district need-based, would potentially would our funding go up as state aid increases?
That's what we talked about yesterday. So I think that's one of the things that I anticipate happening. That's why I said there's going to be that gray area. So it's based on need, but it's also based on the amount of special ed students you have in your district. So they look at they actually will look at our data, I think it's in May, because I get my numbers in June. So then they will tell me in June what my number is. So I think they go on the BENS data in October, and then they kind of look at the district as a whole. It's one of those great things we'll never figure out from the state.
Yeah, these funding streams are based on number of students that have IEPs, the significance of their IEPs, and some other demographic data of those students.
Okay.
The state aid that I think you're thinking about, Jen, is the wealth ratio of the school district, and that's the foundation aid. So that is how wealthy are we as a school district vis-a-vis number of tax-paying entities versus how much revenue we receive versus, especially within the point, the significance of the pilot. So there are two different calculations.
Okay.
IDEA is calculated actually based on each child.
Okay.
Foundation aid for New York State purposes is based on wealth ratio, equalization, and property value against number of businesses you have in your community.
Wow, so it's really specific then.
It is. The one thing that I'll also tell you is that, I talked about the cost per kid if they're out of district. That doesn't include our summer programs. So you also have that on top of your summer programs. So when you think about all the students we have in our district, if we were to have to send them to an out-of-district placement plus the summer program, so, I just want to put that into perspective when we're talking about the needs of our students.
And then the ABC tuition, so it's, you're expecting it to go up.
Yes.
Are you expecting to get more children from out of district and expanding our existing programs, or?
So right now, we did not slate for a 2-3 class for ABC at UB because we didn't need it yet. We had another year of growth. So when we sat, I sit monthly with each level of, so this sounds interesting. So if you're going to be a 4 or 5 teacher, I sit with you. Okay, what do you need? What are the needs for next year? What am I missing? And it's their time to ask me questions and say, we're going to need this. Oh, and there's something else that we want to talk about. Or we say, okay, we don't have everything, we go. So I meet with ABC more frequently because that's where you find the biggest shift based on growth of the kids each month. So when we met just recently, I think it was one day last week, we talked and we actually said, yeah, we need, because we have an idea of about 4 incoming and I have 2 open spots next year. So we're seeing more kids coming to us that are ours, but I have districts that are asking for placements.
And if I can, the process of accepting a child for tuition is significant in its own right. They do a visit, the child comes, someone from their home school, sometimes parents, they meet with Lisa, they meet with the teacher, they meet with, sometimes interact with other children. So it's not just it's not just an open door policy. There are criteria that need to be met.
So it's actually, I put this in place because at one time they were getting kids that really weren't appropriate, right? And we couldn't keep them in program. So we do an intake process where I meet with the team. I write the OT, PT, speech, behavior, psychologist, social worker, my assistant director, the principal, if there's a principal that participates. We all meet and we say, okay, this is the kid on paper. I believe paper, it's great. I don't really believe in it until I meet the kid. I want to see what the student can do, what the student's behaviors are, the reactions to stimuli, the reaction to other students in the classroom. So it's pretty in-depth, and then from there, I will reach out to the district. I'm good to go. Would you like me to reach out to the family? Yes. I then set up a virtual intake of the family. We ask the students to be on camera too. We do some kind of like, we can do some academics, we can do some, just really having a conversation with students, see what they can do. And if we feel that student's appropriate, we talk to families, we let them know. We will bring the student in, not the families at this point. The student in for like an hour trial. I have a student coming in a couple weeks for a 3-hour trial. So it's really intense. Then we get back together and we say, okay, is this acceptable? What do we need to keep the student in our program? Can we program the student? So it's a pretty, it doesn't just happen overnight. So it usually takes, and when they asked me about it, I said, I'm following a process, and it doesn't matter. I follow the process for every student. Even if they look great on paper and they can fit, we still follow the process because the process will always lead us in the right direction.
One last thing, is there anything that's not working, that programs that aren't as successful as you hoped, or anything additional that we should be looking into that we're not?
We're really spending a lot of time right now. So we've spent a lot of money on PD for developing IEPs that are strong. So in special ed, you get an indicator every year. So the state calls you, not really, they send you a thing and they have years listed of all the indicators. So this year, we have indicator 13, which is our transition indicator. So when we sit and we look at that, teachers learned what it was 6 years ago. Well, guess what? It's changed. So we have to begin to evolve with time. So we've been doing a lot of PD on transitions. We've been doing PD on writing stronger IEP goals, collecting data. And it's not that it's not going well. We always can improve no matter what we do. Anybody can improve. I can improve every day. But I think the one thing that's important is that everybody's willing to do it. And I don't think there's anybody that says, no, I won't do that. And I think that's the mindset we need, is how do we help kids get better and how do we help ourselves get better. So if Joe Schmo from the high school calls me and says, Lisa, we need this PD, I'm like, okay, let's make it work. So I don't ever have anybody saying, no, we don't want that, no, we're not doing that. And I think that's the positive. But we can always get better. We have the areas to work on. Transition right now is a huge one for us. But we'll get there.
Thank you. No, thank you very much.
Just one question. So if you're looking at over 50 kids coming in from the Cpsc, that seems like a lot. How do we compare to other districts if we're going to have half, a third of our students?
So you have to look at the needs of them, right? So I may have of the 50, 10 of them need a program, but 40 of them only need related services. Of the 40, the 30 over here needs speech, this 5 needs speech and OT, and this one needs all 3 related services. So I'm not saying I cannot compare myself to like an Elmsford. I could probably call Ossining, I could probably call Lakeland, but it's not uncommon right now in COVID. This has been the last 2 years. I think, Joe, when we talked 2 years ago, because I kept calling him when I'm home, I'm like, I'm going to warn you, I got to warn you, Joe, I'm telling you right now. And it was the anxiety of me, because we were usually bringing in about 20 to 30 kids, and now we're up more. But I think you're also finding that parents are now going to start accepting services because they can either go to people or people can come to them. So I don't think it's a large number because you have to then look and see what programs they're going into. If we had 50 kids coming into a self-contained class or an ICT class, I'd be saying, yeah, let's be worried. But I'm not worried because Ellen is amazing. If you haven't met Ellen, she's been with me since I started. It's been phenomenal. And she has been doing CPS for years. And she can say, no, these 3 kids are just going to have this and this. And she goes, we're just going to be building level here. So if Ellen said to me, Lisa, we should be worried and we should have, be prepared for 3 ICTs and 3 special classes, I'd be worried. But I think we're going to be fine. I think our new thing is, the process of a protocol is let's get the kids in, let's see what they can do. And if we have to reevaluate to see if they really still need speech, OT, or PT, then let's do that. But we don't want to just say, sorry, there's no services when you come in, because we don't know enough about them, and nor do the providers. So not worried yet. I always do put yet at the end of that one. But if it was a big concern, Alan would definitely it would be on my radar.
Because that would mean more staff or
Exactly.
a plan.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're actually, if you think about it, we're going from 3 sections of 4th grade to 3 sections of 5th grade, where this year I only have 2. We only have 1 section in this grade level, now we're going to have 2. So our staffing it will always be cyclical based on the number of kids we have. That doesn't mean that staffing will always be the same and constant. It might be this year we'll lay off this teacher or we'll move this teacher into an AIS position like we kind of did last year, and then we'll do this. So we'll always have the staff and the need of it, it's just how do you utilize it.
And as far as my question about comparing to other districts, you're saying that it's hard to compare?
No, I'm saying it's probably going to be the same anywhere I call. I meet with them Friday actually. We meet once a month with our liaisons. We call it the liaison meeting, so it's all the PPS directors in the county. And we have some people join us from Putnam and I believe Sullivan. And we talk about this a lot, like what does it look like? And everybody's saying the same thing. First it was impartial hearings. First it was referrals when we were out of COVID. Then from that it went to impartial hearings. And then everybody's seeing all these rises. So for the last 2 years, Cpsc coming in for a lot of people has been high.
Okay, thank you.
I'm like trying to step away. I'm like looking at Carol.
I think everybody else asked all of the questions already. Thank you very much. It was a very thorough report.
Thank
We
you.
really appreciate it. So that will bring us to our audience comment section. But before we do that, does anybody need a 5-minute break?
I need like 1.
Okay. Do we have anybody signed up for audience comments? Or how many for? 2 for agenda. 2 for agenda. Are the people who are signed up for agenda comments okay with us taking a 5-minute break, or would you like to do your comments first and then we take a break?
With all due respect, I'd like to get home.
Sure. Okay, that's fine. And I greatly appreciate your comments. So who is our first person?
Our first person is Nancy Penny.
I'm not.
Second person is Marianne Patterswell.
Good evening, Mariella Ferris-Willow. In regards to the Princeton plan, the superintendent said in the 12-15 meeting, we are essentially starting over. Implementing the Princeton plan in September will certainly not be launched without flaws. Not to be negative, but there will be learning curves, there will be mishaps, and there will be confusion, no matter how much planning we do. We are not in the right state to be launching something new at this time. The pandemic has proven and continues to prove that this school year is anything but normal for our children. Whenever something new is implemented, productivity gets stalled or delayed. We cannot afford to lose any more productivity by starting over. It is not fair to our children, and we owe it to our children to do what's best for them. Due to the pandemic, our children's education and development has been delayed. With the Omicron variant now spreading so fast and leading to so many student absences, expert educators don't expect things to improve this year. In fact, the learning gap may widen. Whether it is a teacher trying to teach pronunciation lessons with students that cannot see the position of the tongue and lips because of masks, or having children out of class for 5 to 10 day quarantine, or having a shortage of teachers and TAs, this school year has once again been challenging. On 9/22, a parent told you and all of us that her 5th grader cannot write, spell, or capitalize, and that we need to get back to basics. Furthermore, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, and the American Children's Hospital Association have declared a national state of emergency in children's mental health. Studies have shown that among children and adolescents, 31% have reported anxiety and depression. A little less than 50% have reported moderate to severe impact on mental health. There are a number of reasons why children's mental health has suffered. The one that stands out to me the most is the disruption of routines. The pandemic has resulted in significant disruptions to everyday routines. All children have experienced multiple significant changes to their school routines as schools have implemented measures such as remote learning, social distancing, and masking. The Princeton Plan is the epitome of disruption of routines. 2022 is not the year for new curriculum, school changes, and new programs. The focus should be on stability, building existing relationships, and everyone's health and safety. Lisa herself just said, this has been a difficult 2 years. COVID hit us hard. There's a 3 to 5 year impact of learning, and transitions are so hard. The implementation of the Princeton Plan needs to be halted due to all these reasons. When Princeton Plan was voted on 2021, we didn't know we would still be here, and this needs to be taken into consideration. We need to get back to basics. We need to get back to normal, and we need to think about the emotional distress, anxiety, and PP. The administration and board need to stop dismissing our concerns. It's not about money or approval ratings, but about the mental well-being of our children. For anyone that is listening to the live stream tonight and agrees, speak up. For anyone that is in this room tonight and agrees with me, stand up. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments this evening.
Would you like to say anything, anyone?
I'm sorry.
Would anyone like to say anything in response?
Yes, thank you for your passionate comments and for caring for the children for the district. Now we take a 5-minute recess so we can stretch our legs. Okay, we're back, and the next section of our meeting is our committee reports. I know Finance Committee met, and we had a lovely presentation by Lisa. Does anybody else have a committee report that they would like to comment on?
I attended the Westchester Putnam School Board Association, their town hall meeting they had, with the phone call they have every month. And just to let people know that, Joe's been talking about this before, but we're definitely not alone with sub shortages. It's something that is definitely region-wide, and that was something we heard loud and clear in that phone call. It's just the difficulty with having teachers who are sick and who need to quarantine, and then also the difficulty with finding substitutes. The other issue that a lot of other districts are having is transportation, but it seems like we're doing okay with that so far with our district. And then the other thing we talked about was in-person learning, virtual learning, and how that's going at different schools, and when they're needing to go virtual, and trying to, everybody's goal is to try, of course, keep kids in person as much as they can. And that was pretty much it, but just kind of an update on that.
Thank you, Lisa. Anybody else? There's a lot of comments from Lisa's tonight. Lisa's. All right, so that brings us to our board comments, new business. To start off our new business section, I'd like to announce that petitions for eligibility to run for a seat on the school board are now available from our district clerk. Board seats are available on a rotating basis. Each school board term is 3 years. We have a 7-member board, so for 2 of the 3-year cycles, there are 2 seats up for election, and 1 year there are 3 seats. This year there are 3 seats in contention. There are no term limits for school boards, and there is no obligation for current or prospective trustees to announce their candidacy until the day board eligibility petitions are due. This year, board eligibility petition packets are due into Carmen Koch at the district office by no later than 5 p.m. on April 18, 2022. More detailed information on running for school board seats is available on the school website under the Board of Ed drop-down link with the heading Running for the School Board. So, just some basic information for the public. A high-functioning school board has been shown to impact their students' education in a positive way. High-functioning school boards consist of trustees that work collaboratively together and collaboratively with the school superintendent to enact the vision and mission of the district. Trustees must be able to vote on difficult, impactful decisions and then be able to move forward in support of the majority decision of the board, whether they agree with the final decision or not. Diverse voices resulting in conversations about each challenge from many different perspectives help produce a more solid decision. If a board is unable to move forward, however, they become deadlocked and non-functional, which ultimately hurts their students. The requirements for school board eligibility are few. You must be 18 years of age or older. You must be a current resident of the Hendrick-Hudson School District and have lived here for at least 1 year. You must be a citizen of the United States. You must be able to read and write. And you cannot be currently employed by the school district. That's it. It's not necessary for you to have a college degree, to have held a PTA or other school leadership position, to have participated on any other board, to be a manager in your company or a leader in your profession, to have public speaking experience, or to have in-depth knowledge about education or curriculum, or to be a current or prospective parent. You just need to bring your own voice and perspective to the table in a respectful manner, be ready to approach decisions in a thoughtful way, and to consider the well-being of the whole district. Are you wondering if you should be running for school board? I should have had this audience reminded of this. If you do not see yourself represented at this table, you should consider running for school board. If you are a recent graduate, and not necessarily from Hendrick-Hudson, you should consider running for school board. If you're an empty nester or a senior citizen, you should consider running for school board. If you've had a positive or negative experience in school here or in another district, you should consider running for school board. If you have recently moved to the district with the intention of making it your home, you should run for school board. If you're a long-term or returned resident to this district, you should consider a run for the school board. If you are looking for a meaningful way to volunteer for your community, you should consider a run for the school board. But primarily, if you care about the students in our public education system, you should run for school board. Those who know me in real life know that I have quite a bit of social anxiety, hate public speaking, and seriously intimidated by being on camera, and not really what you might consider a natural fit for such a public position. You also know that I'm passionate about public education, feel strongly about community service as part of civic responsibility, and am eager to learn from new challenges. Because of these core beliefs, I did not let my fears stop me from volunteering for a position on the Board of Ed, or cause me to refuse when my fellow trustees chose me for board leadership. I can't say I've enjoyed every minute, or that there haven't been unsettling times, but I have found board service to be a fulfilling and educational way to give back to the community. I would highly recommend it, and I will miss it. I am one of the trustees whose term is finishing this year. Unfortunately, some family challenges that have recently developed and are still evolving will prevent me from being able to run for re-election this year. My focus needs to be on those challenges, and I feel strongly that it would be disingenuous of me to run for a trustee seat without the expectation that I could give the community a full 3-year commitment with the dedication and time successful board service demands. I'm grateful for the opportunity the community has provided me to serve them, and will continue to put my all into my leadership position for the remainder of my term. It has been an honor to serve the students of this district, and if anyone has any questions about board service, campaigning, etc., Any of the trustees would be happy to speak to you. Thank you again. Do we get any other new business? I know we do for Lisa.
First, thank you, Carol, for your service to our board. I know it's not goodbye yet, but just thank you for the time that you've put into this. So we need to elect or vote for the New York State School Board Association Area 10 Director tonight. The person who was our director is now the president of NISBA, and so she has vacated her position, and we have 3 candidates. There is Cheryl Brady, she is from the White Plains School District, Deborah Gotti from North Rockland School District, and Frank Harrington from Ardsley School District. And I guess I'm supposed to make a motion to vote for these. And Bill had suggested that I give my recommendation, so I'm going to. I know personally 2 of the candidates, and I would recommend that we elect Cheryl Brady from White Plains.
Oh, that's good, because that's who I was going to vote for, too.
Yeah, me too.
All right. So I guess I'd make a motion that we elect Cheryl Brady of White Plains for the NISBA Area 10 Director position. Anybody second that?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous.
Thank you.
Anybody else have
Thanks
any?
for the research and all the information you provided. So,
Anybody else have any new business? I've gotten my voice back from that very long statement I forced myself to read. All right, that brings us to our next audience comment section, and I think we only have one speaker, Ms. Hickey. Since you know our public comment introduction by heart by now, I'm going to skip that tonight.
I do. I want to say thank you for your service, Carol.
Thank you.
And I just want, I don't know if this is on the website or not, if maybe you can put the time commitment, if people are thinking about running and you don't really know and you have a family and you work full-time, what the time commitment really entails, really people.
They're
A lot.
actually
a lot.
I mean, I think before people go over, they really need to know what they're getting into and if they can give it their all.
Right. There, on that drop-down that says running for the board, there are links to the NISBA site that talks about the board member experience. Westchester Bethlehem School Board Association also runs a program before petition ballots are due, talking about what is required to be a trustee. So there are a lot of resources out there. We do have it on our website as well. There are 3 really good links to look at, and it is a significant time commitment. But it's very worthwhile and a really, great way to give back to the community.
And I actually had 2 comments. One of them is I've been participating in the strategic planning committee and having been on lots of committees. I don't mean to be a negative Nelly, and I'm hoping this is not what this is going to be, but I'm hoping that it's really going to address the disconnect with the community. I mean, you can tell just with what was picked out of the surveys that there is a disconnect with the community, and it's just not going to be a lot of talking, because since you know this, you've given up a lot of your time, and giving up your time and being part of that, you want to see results. I just want to see where our action plan is going to be to make this disconnect go away. And my last question was about the police presence. I do nothing against the police. But I do notice that there's 2 police officers here. I have noticed that, one outside and one inside, and that we have a counter. And I just wanted to know who is paying for the police presence and the counter we have now for the meetings. Is it the school district that's paying for these people to be here, or is it the town of Cortland? Either way, I think the taxpayers should know, because most of the time that I'm sitting here, there's 1 person. Now there's 13 people tonight. Most of the time there's 2 or 3. So there's 3 positions that we're paying for right now. And maybe there's a reason for it that I don't know. I mean, I've been at a lot of these meetings and I haven't really seen any violence, a disconnect, yes. And definitely people who are frustrated and want to be heard, and just parents that want their fears recognized and to have a voice at the table. But nowhere do I feel the need for police. I think it sends the wrong message. Perhaps there's a piece that I don't know, and that maybe you want to tell me in an email or something, but that's 3 salaries that could be used for something else. Thank you. Thank you for your information.
I'm closing my book already. That brings us to the end of our meeting. Can I get a motion to close the meeting, please? So moved. Can I get a second? Second. All in favor? Aye. Have a good evening. Our next meeting is